is a fascinating guy and truly a great talent, a wonderful actor. Robert Downey Jr. is joining us this evening.
Robert Downey recently had an emotional encounter with a young cancer patient. The little girl had been struggling to pay for her chemotherapy section, and the interesting details of their encounter will leave you completely shocked.
The summer sun beat down on 15-year-old Emily Parker as she stood outside her family's modest home, a simple wooden table serving as her lemonade stand. Her bright, hand-drawn signs waved in the warm breeze, each bearing the heartfelt message, "Lemonade for Hope, help me fight cancer." Despite the oppressive heat and her physical exhaustion, Emily's face was full of determination. She had made up her mind to contribute to her family's struggle against her illness in any way she could. 6 months ago, Emily was diagnosed with leukemia. At first, she hadn't fully understood the severity of her condition. However, as her hair began to fall out and the hospital visits became more frequent, the harsh reality of her illness became increasingly evident. Even more troubling was the quiet concern she observed on her parents' faces. She often overheard hushed conversations about medical bills and treatment plans, always concluding with her mother's heavy sighs and her father's reassurances that they would find a way. Ever since her diagnosis, Emily hated seeing her parents worry. She wanted to help, but felt powerless, until inspiration struck one morning as she stared out her bedroom window. In the house across the street, kids had set up a lemonade stand to raise money for their summer camp. Watching them laugh and wave at passing cars, Emily suddenly had an idea. If they could sell lemonade to fund their adventures, why couldn't she do the same for something far more important? She asked herself rhetorically. As the idea struck her, she found a sense of purpose. When she told her parents, they were reluctant about it. But what Emily did the next day shocked everyone. Despite her parents' reluctance, she created colorful posters and brainstormed recipes. By evening, she was ready. Since her parents saw her passion for raising funds for herself, they had no choice but to help her set up a small table on the edge of their front yard, stocked with freshly squeezed lemonade, plastic cups, and a jar for donations. Not long after she started the lemonade business, her stand quickly became a beacon of hope for Emily and the entire neighborhood. Her infectious smile and unshakable positivity drew everyone who passed by. "Every cup counts," she would chirp, pouring lemonade with the precision of a seasoned professional. Her neighbors, touched by her courage and resilience, often left far more than the suggested donation. Many handed her $20 bills for a single cup. Some even donated without taking any lemonade. The support was heartwarming, but Emily knew it wouldn't be enough to cover the staggering cost of her treatments. Still, she persisted. She found joy in every moment spent at her stand, seeing it as her small way of fighting back against the disease that had turned her life upside down. But selling lemonade wasn't just about raising money. It was also a way for Emily to hold on to a sense of normalcy. Before her diagnosis, she had been a typical, carefree child who loved riding her bike and playing with her friends. Now her days were filled with hospital visits, blood tests, and chemotherapy sessions that left her feeling weak and nauseous. The lemonade stand gave her a reason to get out of bed. Emily's effort quickly gained attention as news of her attempts to raise money for her chemo spread around the neighborhood. In no time, strangers began to stop by, some offering donations, others simply sharing kind words of encouragement. One busy afternoon, a kind elderly couple pulled up in their car and bought 2 cups of lemonade. The woman leaned down to Emily and said softly, "You're an inspiration to all of us, sweetheart. Keep going." She gave her a short encouragement. However, it might be an ordinary motivation to the woman, but to Emily, her short words of inspiration meant the world to her. The lemonade stands symbolized resilience and hope as the days turned into weeks. By the end of the summer, Emily had raised several $1,000s for her treatment, but she knew the journey was far from over.
Despite her exhaustion, she remained committed to her cause. Her lemonade stand wasn't just about the money. It was about proving she could still fight, inspire, and unite people, even in the face of overwhelming odds. After months of running the lemonade shop, Emily's story attracted media attention, including one that would change her story forever. She granted interviews to local news stations, and that was when Kelly, Robert Downey's media assistant, caught wind of her story. He decided to share her story with Downey, who is a staunch cancer eradication advocate. What Downey did after hearing her story left everybody speechless. It was another working day, and Emily was back at her lemonade stand. Earlier that day, her parents wanted her to rest, but she insisted on opening the stand, telling them she would only spend 2 hours and then return home after meeting her target price. After 30 minutes of opening her stand, she noticed a black sports car approaching her store. At first, her heart raced because the car doesn't look familiar in the neighborhood. But then, to her surprise, the vehicle slowed down and pulled over right in front of her lemonade stand. The car door opened, and a man in jeans, a plain t-shirt, and sunglasses stepped out. He removed the sunglasses and smiled warmly at her. It took Emily a moment to recognize him, but her heart skipped when she finally did. It was Robert Downey Jr., her favorite Hollywood actor in the Iron Man movie. When she set eyes on her idol, her eyes widened in disbelief. For years, she had admired Robert's courage, ingenuity, and, most of all, his determination to fight against impossible odds, something she deeply related to. While she was standing in surprise, trying to recover from the shock of seeing her favorite Hollywood actor, Robert asked, "Is this Emily's lemonade stand?" in a calm and approachable manner. When Emily heard him, she was short on words, but after some seconds, she managed to answer yes, with her cheeks flushing. Robert bends carefully to meet Emily's eyes. "I hear you have the best lemonade in town. Maybe I could have a glass?" Emily quickly nodded in response, fumbling with the pitcher as she poured a cup. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed it to him. As Robert took a sip, he smacked his lips exaggeratedly and beamed. "Wow, this is fantastic. I might have to come here every day." Emily giggled, her nervousness easing a little. The exchange drew the attention of a few neighbors, who stopped to watch the unexpected interaction. As Robert sipped, his gaze drifted to the sign above her stand. The words, "Help me fight cancer," seemed heavier than the hot summer air. His smile dimmed slightly, replaced by an expression of quiet concern. "So, Emily," he said gently, "why don't you tell me about this lemonade stand of yours?" At first, Emily was reluctant to tell him the details behind her lemonade because she was not the type of girl who runs her mouth around. However, something about Robert's kind eyes and patient expression felt comforting. Slowly, she began to open up, explaining her diagnosis, the costly treatments, and her determination to contribute and help her parents in any way she could. Robert listened intently, nodding occasionally but staying silent. It wasn't the silence of disinterest, but the kind that comes from truly hearing and understanding someone's story. When she was done narrating her story to her favorite idol, Emily looked down with her voice dropping. "It's not much," she mumbled. "I just wanted to do something to help my parents sort the chemotherapy money." Setting his cup down, Robert crouched beside her, reassuringly touching her shoulder. "Are you kidding me?" His voice was full of awe. "What you're doing here is incredible. You're not just selling lemonade, you're inspiring people. Do you know how brave you are?" he asked the little girl. Emily blinked. Praise from a real-life superhero, one of her idols, was the last thing she had expected. At that moment, a small crowd began to form around them. Neighbors, passers-by, and even a few drivers who had noticed the celebrity stopped to see what was happening. Robert didn't seem to mind the attention. He used it to amplify Emily's story. Robert's next action kept everyone talking. He stood and turned to the growing crowd, his voice carrying the weight of sincerity. "This little girl is a real hero," he announced. "She's out here fighting her own battle with courage and determination, and I think it's time we all rallied behind her." Emily's cheeks flushed as the crowd cheered and clapped. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Robert pulled out his phone. "Emily," he said, turning back to her, "how about we tell the world about your lemonade stand?" Before Emily could respond, he switched on the camera and began recording a video. He introduced her to his followers, sharing her story passionately. As he spoke, he encouraged people to donate to help with her treatment and promised to match every dollar raised personally. Emily stood frozen, barely able to process what was happening. When Robert ended the video and hit post, her lemonade stand was no longer just a neighborhood effort. It was about to go global. "Now," Robert said with a wink, "let's see how the world's heroes show up for you." Emily's heart swelled with gratitude and hope. She felt like she wasn't fighting this battle alone for the first time in months. At the same time, Robert was still with Emily, and the crowd around her grew, drawn not only by Robert Downey Jr.'s unexpected presence, but also by the heartfelt story he had just shared. People of all ages stopped to donate, some buying lemonade, others leaving contributions in the jar without taking a cup. After spending some hours at Emily's lemonade stand, he decided to speak with her, using one of his movies as an example. "You know," he said after a pause, "Tony Stark wasn't just about his suit or technology. His real superpower was his heart. And I see a lot of that same strength in you." Emily's cheeks flushed. She wasn't used to being compared to superheroes, let alone by the man who played her favorite one. As their conversation continued, the crowd around them grew livelier. Strangers began introducing themselves to Emily, offering encouragement and sharing their stories of overcoming challenges. A few people even came forward to tell her how cancer had touched their lives, creating an atmosphere of connection and solidarity. Robert, meanwhile, continued his quiet campaign to boost Emily's spirits. He signed autographs for the kids, posed for selfies, and used every opportunity to redirect attention back to her and her cause. At one point, he leaned closer to Emily and said, "You know, I didn't just stop here for the lemonade. I stopped because I saw someone brave enough to take on the impossible. And trust me, those are the kinds of people who inspire the world." Emily swallowed hard, blinking back tears. "I just want to help my family," she whispered. "And you're doing more than that," Robert said firmly. "You're reminding all of us that no matter how tough things get, we can still fight. That's what heroes do." Their conversation was interrupted by the cheerful chime of Emily's mom's voice. She had stepped outside, astonished to see the bustling scene before their home. Her eyes widened when she spotted Robert Downey Jr. standing beside her daughter. "Emily," her mom said, rushing over. "What's going on here?" Emily grinned, holding up the lemonade pitcher like a trophy. "Mom, Iron Man came to my lemonade stand." Her mother's eyes flickered between her daughter and Robert, disbelief etched on her face. Robert extended a hand and introduced himself. "I'm Robert." He spoke as if she didn't already know. Emily's mother shook his hand, her voice trembling. "Thank you. I don't know what to say. Emily talks about you all the time, and this means the world to her, to all of us." Robert smiled warmly. "Your daughter is truly remarkable. I'm simply here to help her shine even brighter." Emily's mother turned to her daughter, tears welling in her eyes. "We're so proud of you," she whispered, pulling Emily into a tight embrace. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the neighborhood in a soft orange glow, Robert addressed the crowd once more. "Today isn't just about helping Emily, it's about demonstrating that when we unite, we can make a difference. And I believe we've only just begun." After Robert landed his speech, the applause that followed was thunderous, echoing down the quiet suburban street. Emily's lemonade stand, once a small gesture of hope, had transformed into a symbol of resilience, courage, and community. Little did Emily know, this was only the beginning of the extraordinary journey ahead. As the crowd thinned, Robert quietly pulled Emily's mom aside. Her face, a mix of gratitude and exhaustion, clearly speaks of the effect Emily's illness had taken on their family. Robert turned to Mrs. Parker, his voice soft and sincere. Mrs. Parker, I've seen a lot of incredible things in my career, he began, but your daughter's courage and determination, it's on another level. She's a fighter, and I want to help her fight in a way that takes some of the weight off your family. On hearing Robert's plans for her daughter, Emily's mother blinked with tears brimming in her eyes. She thanked him for what he had already done for her princess. On hearing Mrs. Parker's response, Robert smiled, trying to reject her opinion. I highly appreciate that, but we can dream a little bigger. Emily deserves more than a boost in lemonade sales. She deserves a real shot at getting through this. He paused, his eyes meeting Mrs. Parker's, and then made a promise that left her speechless. I'll handle the bills, he said firmly. All of them. The treatments, the medications, and anything else she needs. You focus on what matters, being there for Emily. On hearing what Mr. Downey had for their daughter, You can't be serious, she shouted in disbelief, thinking of the amount he was trying to contribute. However, she was not surprised. He was trying to help because almost everyone in the city knew Robert as a philanthropist who had always shown up for needy people. In a very sharp tone, I've never been more serious, Robert replied. Your family shouldn't have to worry about finances while dealing with this. Let me help. The weight of his words hit her like a tidal wave. She reached out, clasping his hands in hers. Thank you, she choked out, her voice barely audible. I don't know how to thank you. You just did, Robert said with a warm smile. At this time, Robert wasn't yet done with helping the family. His next action will shock you. Just keep watching. He knew the Parkers needed a support system beyond medical expenses to help with Emily's battle's emotional and logistical challenges. Returning to Emily's lemonade stand, he addressed the remaining crowd. Everyone, Robert said, his voice filled with authority and compassion. We've all been inspired by Emily today. In a very audible voice, Robert announced that he would cover all the girls' medical expenses. After that, he urged the crowd that they could do more together as a community to ensure Emily and her family receive the support they need every step of the way. He laid out a plan. Local companies can give meals, neighbors can organize carpools for hospital visits, and anyone with resources or skills, financial, logistical, or emotional, can participate. His words sparked an explosion of activity as the crowd began to exchange ideas, offer assistance, and form an impromptu support network determined to rally behind the Parker family. While the local community mobilized, Robert's video about Emily's lemonade stand continued to gain more visibility online. Within hours, it had gone viral. Donations poured in worldwide, flooding the Robert's GoFundMe page for the Parkers. Major media outlets quickly picked up the story, captivated by the heartfelt tale of a Hollywood superstar stepping in to help a small-town girl in such a personal and profound way. Headlines like Robert Downey Jr. becomes real-life hero for 15-year-old battling cancer, and Iron Man helps young fighter take on her toughest battle dominated the news cycle. Still, amidst the hot headline, Robert stayed focused on Emily, trying his best not to be moved by the reaction they were getting from the media. 2 weeks after his visit, he arranged for her to have a private hospital suite, ensuring she received the best possible care, and sent her daily messages filled with encouragement and humor. A week after Robert's booked appointment with the doctor, Emily and her family received an invitation to a special event. They were told to dress casually and meet at a nearby community center. What surprise could he have for the family at the community center? The family arrived at the community center on the scheduled day to meet their helper. As they entered the room reserved for them, it was fully decorated with balloons and banners featuring Emily's name. The room was filled with gifts, letters, and donations from people worldwide. But what fascinated Emily the most was the cast of the Avengers waiting to meet her. In the center were Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, Mark Ruffalo, and other stars from the Marvel Universe. They greeted Emily with hugs and high fives. They had all come together, inspired by Robert's desire to show their support for the young girl who had become a real-life superhero in their eyes. Emily,
Chris Evans said, as he knelt to meet her height level. "We heard about your story, and we just had to meet the bravest hero we know." Emily's eyes widened in disbelief, her voice barely a whisper. I can't believe this is happening." Robert stepped forward and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Believe it, kiddo. You've inspired every one of us. Today is all about celebrating you." The cast spent hours with Emily, playing games, signing memorabilia, and filming a short skit where she heroically saved the Avengers from a pretend villain. For Emily, it was a day straight out of a dream. A day where her illness took a backseat to laughter, love, and an overwhelming sense of hope. In the months following Robert Downey Jr.'s incredible gesture, Emily's life transformed in ways she could have never imagined. The cost of her medical care was no longer a burden for her family, and her tale inspired international cooperation. Robert made sure Emily had first-rate care by arranging for her to receive treatment at one of the top pediatric cancer hospitals in the nation. 3 weeks after, Emily was called up by the hospital for her chemotherapy session, and it was the best day she would ever forget in her life. Very early on the bright Monday morning of her appointment, her parents wheeled her into the brightly lit lobby of the Children's Hospital, where she was greeted with a surprise that left her in shock. Emily's eyes lit up when she saw the surprise Robert had made for her in the hospital. She was shocked and asked her mom who curated the surprise for her. As she began her first round of treatment at the new facility, Emily quickly realized it wasn't like the cold, sterile hospitals she had dreaded before. Here, the doctors and nurses treated her like family, making her laugh and ensuring she was comfortable. One afternoon, during a particularly tough chemo session, Emily's spirits were lifted when she received an unexpected video call. On the screen appeared Robert Downey Jr., grinning ear to ear. "Emily," he said, his face lighting up, "how's my favorite superhero doing today?" Emily laughed, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I'm okay. They gave me medicine to make me feel better." "Good to hear," Robert replied. "You know Tony Stark has a lab full of geniuses working on stuff like that. I think they'd be proud of you for being so tough." Their calls became a regular part of her treatment, and each time, Robert made her laugh with jokes, stories, and words of encouragement. He even got some of his Marvel co-stars to join in, including Chris Hemsworth and Tom Holland, who spent a call debating who was the better superhero. Emily, of course, sided with Iron Man. That's not all. As Emily's treatments progressed, her strength began to return. Her doctors marveled at her resilience, attributing much of her progress to the positivity and support surrounding her. By the time her final round of chemotherapy approached, the hospital staff decided to throw her a special celebration. The hospital's courtyard was transformed into a mini red carpet event, with decorations inspired by her lemonade stand. The event was filled with balloons, lemonade stations, and a small stage where Emily could share her story. To the Parkers family, Robert Downey's nice gesture has helped save their baby girl's life.